through my time at Thornhill, a quick tour of the memories, mischief and misses from 1975 to 79 when I was there, and then end off with an unexpected return to the school in 1983. So for the next few minutes, please join with me as I open my scrapbook of memories. I will walk to school, sit through boring assemblies and even more boring lessons, dodge flying blackboard dusters, evade the prefects, all on the time on the hunt for a C-block squeeze. We'll cover afternoon and weekend sports and various extracurricular activities, some sanctioned by the school, others not. And then after dark, we'll do a quick check-in on the school socials. But before I start, I recently had the privilege of meeting up with Nigel Rowlands, who also lives in Brisbane. Nigel was the inaugural head boy of Thornhill in 1959 and 60. Sadly, he couldn't be with us here today, but we recorded a short welcoming message, including a poem that Nigel wrote for our celebrations.
Believe it or not, I'm Thornhill's first head boy, 1959 and 1960. And in honor of this platinum anniversary, I'm going to retell a poem I wrote for the 50th anniversary. It's called A Toast for Thornhill Alumni, September 2025. And I'm going to read it because I don't remember things so well nowadays. Our school's tribal elders meet to mark the TS Platinum anniversary. So here's to Alma Mater's dream time at our 70th corroboree. Retell the Thornhill story and relive those golden days. May they enfold you in a butte nostalgic haze. May the ghosts of friendships past be with you today and quicken all the good times of our shared yesterday. I wish you guys a good meeting.
Thank you, Nigel. That was really special for my first head boy. Okay, it's time to teleport back to 1975 and start my journey at Thornhill. Getting up early to trudge to school was always a challenge for me in my first years of high school. Then puberty kicked in and suddenly there were incentives to be at a co-ed school. I was fortunate enough to find myself in a class with some really attractive girls. Two in particular stood out for me. First there was Bronwyn, a pretty girl who ultimately went on to win the Miss Thornhill competition. And then there was Julie, a vivacious redhead, more outgoing than Bronwyn, but both equally out of my league. However, both girls were day scholars, as I was, and both lived within striking distance of our house. I was too shy to approach either of them directly, so I planned to overcome that by being their protector while I carried their books to school. My daily conundrum, though, was which target to aim for. Go west down Gilbert Road and hope to encounter Bronwyn. This was a much more direct route to school, but it was also a main thoroughfare for other hormone-fueled boys living in Adelaide, all with similar ambitions. I would have to wait for a break in the traffic and then time my pace perfectly to arrive at her house as she was coming out. Walk too fast, I would have to lurk in the bushes opposite her house, surreptitiously tying and retying my shoelaces. But quite often those best hiding spots were already taken by the early risers. Plus, I had no way of knowing whether Bronwyn had really left for school, was sick that day, or her parents had dropped her off. So most days I ended up completing the walk of dejection on my own. My other option was to head east along Gordon Crescent and hope to encounter Julie. There she is. Her house a bit further away from the school. It had similar challenges, but there was always the added benefit of having much more time on the walk to school. And I was actually successful once with Julie, unlike my zero score with Bronwyn. I arrived at just the right time, no competition in sight, and graciously extended my helping hand. However, that joy was short-lived, as her real boyfriend, Dave, unbeknown to me that she had one, was waiting for her at the next corner. He was simply unimpressed, and I had to surrender my prize and trudge along behind him. Once I arrived at school, the first challenge of the day was finding someone generous enough to let me copy their homework, or careless enough to let me leave their books unattended. Then came the frantic scribbling before assembly, carefully tweaking the answers just enough to avoid suspicion. It was always an awkward choice: incur the wrath of teachers like Mrs. Hart for unfinished homework, or catching up with your mates or your romantic partner. Anyone else here have Mrs. Hart as an optics teacher? I think most of us did. I painfully recall a trip to the deputy head's office after she caught me teaching a test that I hadn't studied for. In a fit of panic, I'd written crib notes on my thigh. I slowly set up the legs of my shorts to reveal the answers. Unfortunately, my apparent preoccupation with my nether regions was a little bit too apparent. I was hauled up in front of the class and forced to show everybody the proof of my dishonesty. I wasn't sure which was worth everyone focusing on my pulled up shorts or the corporal punishment that followed thereafter. Assemblies themselves were a special form of torture, painful both physically, because we had to sit on a hard floor with your bum going numb, and mentally as we tried to stay awake through hymns, readings, recitals and reprimands. The only ones I ever enjoyed were the final assemblies that singled the end of term. Who can forget those immortal first line, "Lord, dismiss us with thy blessing." And then just when you thought freedom was around the corner, the teachers would trap us with a flickering black and white National Geographic documentary to fill in the hours until we could be released. We sat there half asleep while the teachers snuck off to the school pub, a place we all knew existed but none of us were supposed to know about. Some of the class memories spring to my mind. Remember geography teacher Mr. Dykstra and his deadly aim with the blackboard duster? Or getting a wad of soggy, chewed up paper smacked into the back of your neck from the guy behind you with his fly patty or big pen bloater? Or biology, where we dissected those poor white rats and then hid parts of them in our mates' pencil cases, their blazer pockets, or in their lunch. Break time couldn't come fast enough for me. Form 1 was characterized by dodging the school seniors intent on liberating my peanut butter and jam sandwiches or my tuck money. Big shout out to Joe Ward and Steve Prophet. Then having to stand at either end of C block to keep chips for any prefects or teachers that came along to disrupt activities on Lovers Lane. And I did benefit from those centuries in my later years, so I guess I was just paying it forward. We were so poor. That tuck money was a real treat. Who can forget the jam donuts, those apricots, those soggy fish? Suddenly you had lots of friends and interest from the girls. But then you were ultimately usurped by the guy that arrived back from South Africa with a packet of beachies for a box of fizz pops from his last trip down there. Being day scholars, we usually went home for lunch, then returned for afternoon sports and extramural activities. It was a time of less oversight by the teachers, and many took advantage of it, especially the boarders. There were special spots around the school where one could retire for a sneaky smoke or grope. My memory's fading, but I seem to think that these were the most common spots. Let's have a show of hands for those who frequented each one of these. The bamboos near the caretaker's house. Behind the wall, between the two fields. Behind the squash courts. The electricity substation or the pump house near the girls' hostel. The prefect's study. The mini fields across from the squash courts. Clonsilla service station. And any others that I may have missed out. Okay, let's go on to the sporting side. I was always better at sports than I was academically, which didn't take much effort. I even had the honour of captaining our under-15 rugby team to what can only be described as a record-breaking result against Chapman. We narrowly lost 82 nil. I remember the following Monday morning assembly, John Evie, the headmaster, he skimmed over the score and told the entire team to report to his office immediately afterwards. Then he delivered a blistering tirade. We were embarrassment to the school, to our families, and to the entire human race. We had sullied the name of rugby worldwide. I'm guessing lost him a bit of money when he spent with the opposing headmaster. As team captain, I got an extra dose of his wrath, as did our unfortunate coach. Mr. Edie's choice of words probably wouldn't survive in today's more woke world, but to be fair, it had the desired effect. It spurred us on, and we never lost by more than 50 points for the rest of the season. Jobbing for a few years, playing for the first 15 rugby team came with a lot of prestige, both real and imagined. Chief amongst the perks was the right to wear special scarf for school hours. I tried to get somebody to knit one for me for this reunion, but it seems that the old ladies no longer knit these days. However, I've made that up, one up here from a scarf that I had with suitable apologies to the wallabies. Back in those days, my mom knitted me an extra long version which could easily wrap around 2 people. It turned out it was actually quite useful. The scarf wasn't just a symbol of rugby glory, it was often borrowed by your girlfriend as a sort of badge of honour. Unofficially, it meant you were dating a first-team rugby player, but officially it had more practical uses, like covering up love bites. On the other side of the scale, you didn't want to be in one of the lower down cricket teams. Equipment was always scarce, with the best stuff going to the first teams. I never made it past the third team, which was always ended up with one set of pads for the entire team. So that meant only 1 pad per batsman, and most of the straps didn't work anyway. Worse still though, we only had 2 boxes, so the outgoing and incoming batsmen had to swap in the middle of the field. On the positive side though, it was always nice and warm. I was never much of a swimmer, but I did enjoy a dip with some of the guys that would bunk over the fence. Neil and others talked about Gary Drew. ChatGPT wouldn't do me a cartoon with the guy with the spike for his foot, but this one's the best that they can do. But I think the people laughing next door is pretty appropriate, because that's all we did while we were waiting for the teachers. Okay, weekends obviously meant more sport at home or travelling away, which greatly expanded one's dating catchment area. I have great memories of the long trips to Bulawayo, Savoia or Fort Vic. Some bad, some really good. There was a definite hierarchy on the bus, with the juniors up front, the seniors towards the rear, and the back seat reserved for couples, either long-established couples or transients. The juniors' main task, though, was to run interference if any of the chaperoning teachers stood up and tried to make their way towards the back. Time was needed to throw the smokes out the window, unshare the blankets, and slide back to your own seat. Bus trips always meant a very early start, with the hostel providing a packed breakfast. Who else gets PTSD when you encounter a hard-boiled egg, grey in colour, dried cheese sandwich, and a shriveled up orange? I'm convinced that all those uneaten oranges were gathered up at the end of the trip, cut into quarters, left in the sun until the following home game, when they were taken onto the field at half-time. I was never a boarder, but I did have a few relationships with Holton House inmates and some run-ins with their prison wardens. One in particular never warmed to me. Jenny Hoopner was my absolute nemesis. For some unfair reason, she never trusted me. She was often the teacher in charge over the weekends, which was when some of the boarders were allowed to go out to approved friends' houses for the day. However, this permission was only granted for special occasions and necessitated a personal call with the teacher in charge. One such call on a Friday evening is still vivid in my memory. My girlfriend at the time, let's call her Jane, put me through to Miss Hoopner, who may or may not have started the weekend celebrations with a bottle of wine. I failed miserably in my attempts to convince her that it was my dad's birthday weekend, and equally failed to get my sister Flo to masquerade as my mother when she was asked to put on the phone. All's well that ends well, as Jane just banked up last year anyway. School socials. I attended the school socials with mixed feelings. On the one hand, there were girls. On the other hand, there's the fact that I have 2 left feet, so would never be considered for dancing with the stars. I'd spend the evening sitting with the other shy guys along one side of the hall, staring at the line of female wallflowers on the other side. Then as the evening wound down, and suitably fortified from the quarter jack of cola cane in my blazer pocket, I would dash across and clumsily ask someone, anyone, to dance with me. Most times the girls were not that desperate, but occasionally I would get an empathetic lass to join me for a shuffle to the last dance. Only for Mrs. Keynes to appear with a ruler and enforce the 30 centimetres apart rule. My time at Thornhill ended with the obligatory leavers dance in 1979 and the mailing out of my M-level certificate. Wasn't worth the money. A few years passed though, and in the latter half of 1989, I met Janet Taylor, who was then the head girl at Thornhill. Our courtship was brief, as her family was in the process of migrating to New Zealand. I did accompany Janet to several Thornhill functions, as one song to my time at the school. It's therefore only fitting that I end my talk with a few words from Janet, one of the last school leaders of my generation.
Hello everyone, it's Janet Udy here, but you'd know me as Janet Taylor. I would have loved to have been there with you all to celebrate. However, by the time I found out about the reunion, I'd already planned a trip to Zimbabwe in July with my sister, one of my brothers, Simon, and some of our children. It was amazing to show 2 of my 3 children around the country I grew up in, and also return my father's ashes to Bonda Mission in the Eastern Highlands where he was born. A highlight, of course, was visiting Thornhill High School, full of so many memories from another lifetime. The school itself seemed tidy, but more run down. We were pleased to be shown around Holton House and see the dorm that Elsa lived in. We were convinced the bed was exactly the same one she slept in 45 years ago. We also found the hole in the fence that she used to sneak back into the hostel after bunking out from youth group one Friday night. She had to climb up the drain pipe and into sick bay to get back into the hostel. We also met the current deputy head girl and some of the teachers. They all thought we were really old when we said we attended the school in the 1980s. We received a good education at Thornhill High School, and I was easily able to manage university in New Zealand with my Zimbabwean high school education. While teachers like Shirley Cranswick, M. Chamberlain, and Peter Newling stand out in my memory as particularly excellent teachers, my main memories of the school revolve around friendships and sport. The hockey trips, the swimming events, the school bus, which often broke down coming back from trips, the sports days, and of course squash, the sport that has taken me all round the world as a referee. I'm still in touch with many of my friends from Thornhill. I see Bridget Hattle and her brother Craig often, and see Sharon Lyon about once a year, and keep in touch with many others like Vince Manning and Helen Whiteman, friends that have lasted a lifetime. We were all very privileged to have attended such a wonderful school, and I hope to catch up with some of you when I visit Zimbabwe in the next couple of years with my youngest son, as he missed out on the July trip. I hope you all have a wonderful time together, revisiting your memories of our school.
That ends my thing, and thanks a lot for this opportunity to share some of my own memories of Thornhill, which I'm sure some of you can you had similar ones to that. And thanks for joining us all in this commemoration of our wonderful school. Thank you.